So earlier this week, Trump advisor Jason Miller told Fox News that Donald Trump had plans to return to social media soon, but on his own platform. Now, Axios is reporting that instead of creating a brand new social media network, Trump is out shopping for existing apps to partner with, specifically looking at a relatively small platform called FreeSpace.
Okay, so Democratic strategist Maestro Roger Fisk and culture reporter at The Federalist Emily Jashinsky join us now to discuss. Emily, let me start with you. I got to be honest, I never thought this thing would ever materialize, just like many of the Trump healthcare plans and proposals, and it's coming in 2 weeks. I was like, I'm pretty sure this thing is just fake, and there will be. But seems like there are actual talks that are happening. What does a Trump social media platform where only he is on look like? I mean, will he use it in the same manner? What is its even purpose, honestly? And do you think it would be beneficial to him in the long run?
There's a lot to talk about here. I mean, I think it looks like Parler, to be honest with you. It's the same sort of group of people that would follow to the network. And obviously you would have some reporters refreshing his page and all of that stuff. But I don't think he would really drag like a significant chunk of the like bipartisan fighting that happens on Twitter to another space. I don't think that really happened on Parler. So I think that's what it would look like. But to me, I mean, this may turn out to fizzle, as you said, but it's been really interesting to see him sort of learn how to use press releases post-presidency, because his press releases have gotten very, like, they read like tweets in a way that sort of traditional press releases don't. And he's been issuing them more and more and more and sort of seeing the power that he can just have with a press release. But at the same time, he still craves the independence of being able to send a post that he forces then the media to cover in a way that they can just sort of like, they can tweet a screenshot of the press release and then move on. But if he is going off on some sort of social media platform, he can change the narrative. And so I think he really likes the autonomy that comes with that, even though I think I see like it has served him well not being on Twitter, not because I'm like, I agree with you, some sort of like DC person that just hates his like craziness, but I think it's actually better for him. It forces him to be more targeted in his attacks.
I think you're right.
Yeah, but clearly, Roger, he loved to be able to just pull out on his phone and right then, whenever he was in the moment, watching the Fox News segment or whatever it was, being able to send off a tweet. And yes, he's the former president of the United States. He's friggin' Donald Trump. He's still able to drive a news cycle. But I do think Twitter is where all of the elite conversation is. And so if you're off on some side MAGA-specific social media platform, I don't think that drives the news and the coverage the way that he used to be able to.
Yeah, I used to, and good morning, first off. One of my favorites is when he tweeted with a timestamp that, according to his schedule, he was actually in a bilat with Angela Merkel at the time, which is kind of one of my favorites. To pick up on Emily's point for a second, I think one of the key things, and maybe to phrase this a little bit differently and contribute to it, to create your own little sandbox, right? Just with his echo chamber, is partially scratches the itch for him. But, one of the main kind of emotional diets of the MAGA world was the capacity to drive people like me crazy and call them, very articulate, mean names, which I always try to do on your show and others. And so you take away that capacity to, poke the constituencies that you want to get a negative reaction out of. And then all of a sudden you're just kind of sitting there with the Dan Scavinos and the kind of cult members who, sit in a circle around him as he orates on hydroxychloroquine or injecting bleach or wind turbine cancer or any number of other fever dreams that kind of take up his time. And then you don't have that kind of outrage, right? Because he just says 2 + 2 is 5, and they all sit around and say, of course it's 5. So I don't know that it's going to provide him the emotional nutrition that it did on Twitter, when of course people would like react so strongly and things like that.
There is something to that.
That's interesting.
There really is something to that. What do you think, Emily? Because I see a lot of these efforts. I see, MAGA guys are always like, can we post your video on Rumble? And I'm like, dude, I don't know what Rumble is. Apparently it's a thing. Or like, Parler or any of these other efforts. And I always predicted, which is that it will just lead to a retreat into complete irrelevance, and that there was always something about being and participating within the town square. So if we do see Trump and many of the people around him kind of retreat to a more core audience, What does that mean both for his personal brand, but also for his style of politics and the people around him?
Yeah, I mean, you can't own the libs if there are no libs.
Yeah, there's no libs. No libs to own.
There are no libs to be owned. And yeah, that was definitely part of it, because then you have like the Krasensteins replying to the Trump tweets, and this creates a whole circus. And then the Huffington Post covers the Krasensteins versus Trump, and it does just drives the stupid conversation that we had to have about every single thing that was posted on Twitter, and then that reaction to everything that was posted on Twitter. So no, that will not happen if he is on FreeSpace. I mean, to some extent, there are people on social media, there are leftists on social media that just can't resist going after Donald Trump. So I'm sure they would follow him, whether it is to Parler or to FreeSpace or wherever, they will follow him. And I think it's, to me, one of the biggest mysteries has always been what Donald Trump got, like how his personal interactions with Twitter, what did those look like? Was he scrolling through replies? Because that gets to the question about sort of the emotional diet. And it might seem like a trivial small thing, but knowing whether or not the president of the United States was using one of the worst barometers of public opinion as a barometer of public opinion is a really interesting question to me. And it would be completely skewed and different on another platform. So maybe it would be satisfying for him to see all of these people saying like, greatest president ever, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, he does love the tension. I mean, it makes him feel good to see the hate. So I don't know. I'm just genuinely very curious as to how he interacts with social media on a personal level, period, because I suspect he actually was scrolling through replies.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
We are all very curious about that. And Roger,
can I say one thing in addition to that?
Well, hold on. To argue against my previous point, Emily makes a good point that there are a lot of people who made a lot of money and got a lot of clout off of fighting with Donald Trump or covering Donald Trump. And we've been covering here. I mean, the media's ratings, cable news ratings, are in the tank across the board. CNN lost half of their primetime audience. So if they find, once again, like covering him on FreeSpace or whatever is a ticket to better ratings, well, then they're going to cover him on FreeSpace.
Yeah, I mean, that outrage, right? I mean, that's how that drives so many clicks and things like that. What I was going to say was coming at this from a completely different angle. There's not a lot of evidence of media outlets that from the get-go position themselves as overtly kind of partisan. I mean, One America and Newsmax are kind of filling a space that already existed. But I think of Air America or something like that. And when people just come out and say, we're going to be a progressive radio station, I think they have to go out and just kind of build, a brand more organically. Because when you just come out and say, we're going to be the place for Trump people to go, that's kind of doing it top down rather than allowing it to actually kind of cultivate a real community that then can be branded by virtue of its content and its activity rather than slide 3 in some business plan,
Yeah.
Yeah, really good points
You guys
all
are so
around.
smart. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.